Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, and Isaih Pacheco are three running backs that you need to trade right now. We'll explain why in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you can use on whatever. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also read me at Pro Football Focus and the 33rd Team. Joining me, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also check her out at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we're taking a look at three running backs that you need to trade away before the 2024 season starts. And let's begin with Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. Kate, why should we move him now when he's at the prime age of 25 on a really good offense?
Here's the thing about Jonathan Taylor. We saw last year he finally got his second contract coming off of his rookie deal. Held out a little bit. There was some injury concerns to start the season. Had Zach Moss come in and absolutely light the world on fire. But let's not forget that Zach Moss hit the field on account of injury concerns, which was kind of a recurring theme here in the 2023 season. Now, I think, in terms of a dynasty roster that is contending right now, if you are in, what you perceive to be a contending window for the next two seasons, Jonathan Taylor might be the perfect asset for you because, again, kind of in his prime, has this deal that he's playing on. But we know that when we see these second contracts, there's generally some concern about the longevity. Even though he's 25, he's had a high volume role in this Indianapolis Colts offense. Anthony Richardson, if he's healthy, he's going to be a big part of the ground game. Is it better to go out on top?
Yeah, probably. I'm worried about Jonathan Taylor. I'm worried about the touchdown potential because I think there's a good chance that Anthony Richardson just steals it all. I'm also a little worried, Kate, that this offense is just going to open up more. I think they're going to throw the ball more. They drafted A.D. Mitchell in round 2. They gave Michael Pittman a massive contract extension. They drafted Josh Downs in round 2, round 3 during the 2023 draft. Jelani Woods is coming back from an injury. I'm not saying they're going to be the pass happiest team in the league, but I do wonder if we're going to see them start to skew a little bit more to throwing the ball than they have maybe over the last couple of years. And then the big reason why that I'm kind of not out on Jonathan Taylor, but willing to sell him high right now is the injuries. Jonathan Taylor has really missed a lot of games over the last couple of years with ankle injuries. He had a lower back injury that was causing some tightness in his hamstrings. Usually running backs don't get healthier the more they play in the NFL. He's had a ton of work on him dating back to high school and college. I mean, some of the rushing stuff that he did at Wisconsin was absurd. And early on in his career with the Colts, they loaded him up with a lot of touches. And I do worry, the further that we get along in his career, what is he going to look like at age 25, 26, 27? If I can flip him now for a running back that's, maybe 2-3 years younger. Maybe if you can flip him for a Jahmyr Gibbs, who's being drafted right next to him. Obviously, you probably would have to throw in a little bit more. I would do that. I just think I wouldn't be surprised, Kate, if Jonathan Taylor goes from RB5 to RB 14 at this time next year, and he's having a pretty significant drop.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the point you make about the health component is a very valid one, right? He is only 25 years old, which technically it's not an age cliff, but you do know that as these running backs continue to rack up touches on their bodies, like you pointed out, they don't get healthier, right? And looking at Jonathan Taylor, he's had just under 1,050 career scrimmage touches here, just in his professional career alone. And he's only played one full season to this point in his career, 15 games as a rookie, 11 in 2022, 10 in 2023. Now that the Colts have him on this second contract, would it be fair to say, like, maybe they realize, all right, we've got to protect the asset that we just invested a ton of money in. Maybe we do need to get some rotation in here. And then you mix in the presence of Anthony Richardson. It's kind of a lot for a guy that's currently being valued as the RB5 in Dynasty.
And again, this isn't to say that we think Jonathan Taylor is going to have a down year or anything. I think he's going to have a really good year, but I do wonder, like, is he going to be able to return RB5 prices right now? And what is it going to look like over the next couple of years? Because I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about him seeing a significant decline in his dynasty value over the next 12 months. And that's the reason that you should trade him right now. Kate, I got a couple trades that I want to run by you. Now, these are from the last month, so they're not super updated, but
the situation hasn't changed, so I think they're still probably pretty relevant.
In a super flex league, Jonathan Taylor for Deebo Samuel, the 211, and a 2025 first-round pick.
I'll take the Deebo side.
That's close for me, but you're getting a 2025 pick. There's just so many different ways that trade can work out for you that I like it. All right, next one. We've got Jonathan Taylor for DeAndre Swift and DK Metcalf.
I'll probably stick with Jonathan Taylor here.
I'd probably lean there as well. Jonathan Taylor or the 109 in a super flex rookie draft. So I think you're probably hoping that one of the quarterbacks falls or one of the top three receivers.
I'll probably.
I think I would take Taylor there.
I think I take Taylor there as well.
Because what ultimately the most likely it comes down to, would you rather have Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson or Jonathan Taylor? I would rather have Taylor. A couple more just really quickly. Jonathan Taylor or the 104 in a super flex draft.
I'll take the 104.
Okay. And that's
you're either getting Marvin Harrison Jr. or one of the top three quarterbacks in this class.
Or Malik Neighbors if you like Malik Neighbors better. So
sure.
Don't go out and just sell Jonathan Taylor for 50 cents on the dollar. But if you can make a trade that's equivalent to what his value is now, I think that's smart. Well, I wouldn't be surprised, Kate, though, if dynasty managers are a little bit more worried about Jonathan Taylor than what that dynasty ADP suggests. So I'm curious to see what trades other managers can get done. I'm fascinated by his market.
I mean, his market is probably going to be all over the place because he is one of these assets that, I mean, let's be honest. If he is on your roster, he is absolutely going to win you weeks anytime he is healthy and getting a full workload. The premise of selling Jonathan Taylor right now has nothing to do necessarily with his production here in 2024. It's about getting the most value out of him. I don't think there's any chance that his value ever peaks beyond RB5 at this point in his career. So it's about maximizing that value. So don't sell him just to sell him. But again, Dynasty is this long-term game, right? If you can move on from Jonathan Taylor, get younger in general, if you can maximize on the peak value that he's going to return here now, instead of waiting for that to start to slowly decline, sometimes for certain types of roster constructions, that could be the best move.
The only way that Jonathan Taylor's value goes up is if running backs ahead of him, fall off or get injured. Like, I don't know if there's anything that Jonathan Taylor can do on the field that'll get his dynasty value to go up. I think it's all everybody else around him. Let's talk about Kyren Williams, who's being drafted around the same range as Jonathan Taylor, and why we're a little bit nervous about what the future could look like for him with the 49 or with the Rams. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now that we know who's in the NBA Finals, the Mavs are pretty significant underdogs against the Celtics. I kind of like the Mavs to win in 6 games, which you can also go bet on FanDuel.com right now. You can go look at the series lines. It's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait for the NBA Finals. Feels like it's taken forever for us to get here. But go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or in the free Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we are discussing 3 running backs that you should trade away before the start of the 2024 season. We touched on Jonathan Taylor, and now we're going to touch on Kyren Williams. Kate, why is Kyren Williams a sell right now at his price point?
This is really hard for me to say, Marcus, because earlier this offseason, I was kind of all in on Kyren Williams as a potential value here. But there's been a series of events this offseason that kind of has me a little bit hesitant about his value as a top 6 dynasty running back, which is where he's currently being valued in dynasty startups, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. You look at the way things have been trending, right? And Kyren Williams, he had a very prolific 2023 season. Ranked 95th percentile among running backs with a 90.5 PFF rushing grade. That ranked 3rd among running backs. Averaged 5 yards per carry. 21% missed forced tackle rate. That ranked 13th among 57 qualifying running backs. Averaged 3.27 yards after contact per attempt. That's 84th percentile for the running back position last year. You know, like, we saw him have an absolutely amazing year, right? He led all running backs in rush attempts per game. But the Rams made this investment in Blake Corum, who I thought was pretty much a good pairing, right? I thought that pairing in the backfield made sense. If you love Kyren Williams so much, you love his running style, and you love the way that, man, he always just seems to fall forward for a couple of extra yards. Blake Corum is the perfect complement to that skill set if you want to keep Kyren Williams healthy. But the move to draft Blake Corum in and of itself is a move that tells you, okay, maybe they're not all that comfortable giving Kyren Williams enough attempts per game to lead the NFL. Then you have the injuries here in OTAs, which that is giving Blake Corum an opportunity to get on the field and get these first team reps. We've already heard from Sean McVay that, like, you know, they want to develop Blake Corum into a more true 3-down skill set. And we said this at I don't know what episode we said it earlier this offseason, but like the biggest concern might be, you know, what happens when Blake Corum does get on the field and looks a little bit more athletic, because my, oh my, you look at their relative athletic scores.
Yeah.
Blake Corum is the better athlete all around.
I get really concerned when we're talking about 5'9" running backs that are under 200 pounds who run in the 4.6s, not having production, because Kyren Williams already has it. Like, that's not the thing. It's being able to sustain that production. I really worry about what is this running back going to look like after 2 or 3 years of a monster workload. And we're already seeing kind of the bumps for Kyren Williams. I mean, he got hurt last year, came back and looked really good. Now he's dealing with another injury. At some point, you're just not going to have any more athleticism that you can lose. And it happens really quick for a lot of these running backs, where you'll look awesome one year. The next year, it's gone. And I'm not suggesting it's going to happen this year with Kyren Williams. But would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't. And as somebody who's being drafted as the 30th overall player in Dynasty leagues, it's a little rich for me. I would prefer to trade Kyren Williams now for maybe another running back a couple spots down who maybe has more body armor, right? That I'll give you an example. I would trade Kyren Williams for like Kenneth Walker and something else. Or I would trade Kyren Williams for Jonathan Brooks and X. I think those are the types of moves that active and proactive dynasty managers should make, because I'm so concerned about what Kyren Williams is going to look like going forward with his relatively small body.
Yeah, and Marcus, you hit on Kyren Williams' injury history. Let's just break that down. Courtesy of Draft Sharks, which just shout out to them. They have an awesome kind of database of player injuries that make it super easy to track these things. But yeah, shout out to Draft Sharks. Kyren Williams' injury history in 2022, a broken foot, an ankle sprain. 2023, ankle sprain, hip strain, broken hand. And now we have another foot injury here that's keeping him out of OTAs. And once again, getting Blake Corum on the field, which I do think is key. When you have these kind of undersized players, and I mentioned this with Devin Achane, for instance, like the part of the concern for some of these smaller built players, especially at the running back position, where you're taking a high volume of big time hits that put your body at, more risk for wear and tear, which is, I mean, part of the whole problem in the running back market, right? This is what it comes down to. And Kyren Williams, he has this small frame. He has multiple now injuries that have us kind of concerned. Like maybe his body's not meant to have this, sustained workload over the course of the season. And again, I've kind of done a 180 this offseason with this culmination of events, but I kind of want to get out now while I can, while the getting's good. I enjoyed my season of 2023 production, but breaking him down for a guy like Jonathan Brooks, who might not have as much year one value here in 2024, but like long-term, the much safer option. Trey Benson, another guy with tremendous upside who might not have that in year one, but Kyren Williams is a guy that, depending on how the season shakes out, I could picture us talking about him as like RB20 come 2025.
Just to be clear, I do see the irony in me saying that you should trade Kyren Williams, an injured guy, for another injured guy, and Jonathan Brooks, who's coming off a torn ACL. So I do get that,
but a much younger guy with a much bigger build,
and with much fewer. I mean, you look at the touches that Jonathan Brooks has, like over the last 3 years, almost nothing coming out of Texas. There's a phrase in the NFL that hurt guys stay hurt. And unfortunately with Kyren Williams, we're kind of trending in that direction. I don't want to say that we're there yet, but we're trending there. And I understand there's going to be people listening to this podcast, or you maybe this listener right now that's thinking, I'm in a win now window. I don't really care what Kyren Williams' long-term outlook looks like. If he helps me win this year, that's great. I think that even dynasty managers that are in win now windows should consider trading him, because I think the Rams are just going to have to be smarter with Kyren Williams than they were last year. They just didn't have anybody else when Kyren Williams came out of the game that was able to give them adequate production. I think now that they have Blake Corum, maybe they don't have to give Kyren Williams 25 touches every single week. And the last point I want to make, Kate, is that Sean McVay is known to have a wandering eye. He can be a little fickle at times with players, right? Like he'll love a player, then all of a sudden 2 weeks later they won't even be active. Hint, Darrell Henderson. So I'm not saying that's happening with Kyren Williams, but if Blake Corum has a game where he gets 12 touches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, I don't think he's suddenly going to not be impactful or not part of this discussion. So I would consider moving on from Kyren Williams this offseason if the price is right.
If the price is right. And that is the big thing. And remember, this is Dynasty. This is a long-term game. There are players that maybe you can break Kyren Williams down who maybe also don't have as much long-term value, but can probably pose similar value here in 2024. For instance, a DeAndre Swift, who's being valued, well below a Kyren Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if they posted very similar 2024 seasons. And now I get kind of that similar, 1 to 2 year production out of, a running back in DeAndre Swift. Plus I get maybe another asset in to kind of pair in that trade.
Okay.
But I think breaking him down into some smaller pieces that might have more long-term value could be a league winning move, even if it doesn't feel all that good.
Let's talk about one more running back. It's Isaih Pacheco from the 3-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco now a 2-time Super Bowl champion, but we'll explain why you need to move him this offseason next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to tip off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you, and save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And get this, you can save even more money when you choose a section and you let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, on Tuesday's show, we're going to be doing this exact same show, but talking about wide receivers, 3 wide receivers that you need to move on from this offseason before they see a decrease in their dynasty value. And Kate, there's a big name on that list that you're not going to want to miss, so make sure you tune in for that. But let's finish up this show by talking about Isaih Pacheco, who is currently being drafted as RB12. Why are we moving on from him?
It feels a little bit counterintuitive, right? To trade away the lead running back for one of the best offenses in the NFL, which is trending up by all accounts. 2023 was one of their least efficient seasons in recent memory, especially in terms of the passing game. But the lack of fantasy upside that we saw from Isaih Pacheco last year in a situation where, let's be honest, like there weren't a ton of assets in the passing game that Patrick Mahomes could rely on. The ground game was a key aspect of, just keeping the offense churning. But even when things couldn't have been better for him with lead running back duties, he had 6 top 12 finishes. That's only 2 more than Jerome Ford, who also maybe projects to lead his backfield, which could be a decent offense. Ranked 22nd in rush attempts, dealt with some injuries I'm a little bit concerned about. So in 2022, he suffered a shoulder injury, underwent off-season surgery between 2022 and 2023, came back and actually injured that same shoulder here in week 13. He missed the next 2 games, ended up having a concussion. But as the lead back in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, finishes at RB15 in fantasy points per game, I just think there's no way that we can see Isaih Pacheco, a former 7th round pick, gain any value, and he's got a lot to lose.
The other part to this is we are going into year 3 of Isaih Pacheco. He was drafted in 2022. I do worry about the long-term focus here. Now, obviously, he still has this year and next year on his rookie deal. And in dynasty leagues, we really only care about this year, next year when it comes to the running back position. But I think of the 3 running backs we discussed, I think he's the least likely to stay with his respective team beyond the 2025 season, because I just don't see the Chiefs spending up for a running back. They have so many other positions to pay. I think they know they can cycle through running backs. Andy Reid has a history of doing this all the way back to his time in Philadelphia. And again, I recognize that running back is very much a season-to-season position, but the lack of long-term stability does make me a little bit more nervous. And then on top of that, I just think the pass catchers are going to be better for the Chiefs this year. Okay. I think obviously the addition of Xavier Worthy gives them somebody who has home run speed. We'll see what Hollywood Brown does this year as kind of a deep threat receiver. And I'm also of the belief that I think Rashee Rice is going to play a majority of this season. They drafted Jared Wiley to be the backup tight end behind Travis Kelce. I just won't be surprised if this is a year that Patrick Mahomes gets back to throwing 38, 40 touchdowns, and Isaih Pacheco has a little bit less efficiency when it comes to scoring touchdowns. So I like Isaih Pacheco. I value him as more of a mid-range RB2. I think as RB12, he's wildly overpriced.
Well, let's look at some running backs being drafted behind Isaih Pacheco then, and maybe even a couple spots ahead, just to see kind of where the temperature lies. How about Rachaad White currently being drafted as RB10 in Dynasty?
See, I actually like Pacheco better.
Okay.
You and I are just not huge Rachaad White fans.
Yes. Mr. Inefficiency. No, I'm not a huge fan. Kenneth Walker, RB11.
Walker. I'd rather have Walker.
Okay. Jonathan Brooks, RB13.
Brooks. I mean, it's a 5-year age difference between those two players.
Absolutely. How about James Cook, RB15?
I think I would lean James Cook.
Okay.
But it's close.
This is probably the most interesting name on this list, but hear me out. Trey Benson being valued at RB17. We're huge.
Benson.
Exactly. Like there are about 7 names that behind him that are younger that I would still prefer to have over Pacheco, just due to the fact that like I think they're maybe a bit safer, maybe their contract terms, maybe they're at a better spot in terms of their rookie contracts. Maybe they have more potential, to kind of take over an offense. Like there are a lot of different running backs being drafted behind him that I would simply just rather have in 2024. There are running backs behind him that I would prefer to have long-term just because of their situation. I'm out on Isaih Pacheco. I think
I'm out at that price, just to be clear. Just
not for 2024 necessarily, but I think like the production that you got in 2023, if you're satisfied with that production out of your RB1, by all means, I could picture him having a very similar year. But this is not an offense that is going to be focused on the run. This is not going to be a job that I can see him. He's not going to take over the offense. You want the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands. Is Isaih Pacheco a great grinder that can change the pace for Patrick Mahomes and take a little bit of pressure off the passing game? Yes, but every move the Kansas City Chiefs have made this offseason tells me they want the ball back in Patrick Mahomes' hands. It's not going to get any better than it did in 2023. And 2023, kind of an underwhelming season. Great for real life football. But from a fantasy standpoint, if you're telling me I had the RB1 in the Kansas City offense in 2023 and that's the production I got, I would have been disappointed. Just saying.
Couple trades really quickly before we head out. Isaih Pacheco for Tank Dell.
Tank Dell.
Okay. Isaih Pacheco for a 2025 first-round pick.
I'll take the first.
Then if you like that one, you're going to love this one. Isaih Pacheco. This was in a league a week ago. Isaih Pacheco for Antonio Gibson, pick 112 this year at a 2025 first-round pick.
Done. Smashed.
Yeah. So there are still managers out there that
you might get Jonathan Brooks in that trade. Like
you might. Still managers out there that absolutely love Isaih Pacheco. Now is the time to move him. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the Locked On Sports Today show. It's absolutely fantastic, covering the top sports stories of the day on YouTube or on the Free Fire TV channels app. Go follow the Locked On Dynasty Football podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Make sure you check out her work at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Check out my work at Pro Football Focus, and the 33rd team. And again, we'll see you right back here tomorrow discussing 3 wide receivers that you must trade before 2024.